Welcome to Replenish, the atmosphere of discovery, where we discover the master's plan for our lives. So today's session is on rejection. And if you have your pens and notepad, this might be one that you want to take notes on. So most of the time, rejection is felt in a negative way, right? It produces feelings of worthlessness, inadequacy, and failure most of the time. To reject something simply means that something isn't up to your taste, it isn't up to your standard or satisfaction, right? So that means that you can reject things bad for you, but it also means that you can reject things that are good for you because it's up to your standard and up to your satisfaction. When you reject people or when you are rejected by people, there's a wide range of thoughts and feelings and emotions that are attached to that, right? And just like any other thought or feeling, you have to determine what you're going to do with that, right? Our thoughts operate on a train. If you don't direct the train, it will go the direction that it's going, and it will continue until you stop it or until you redirect it. So think about that with your feelings and your thoughts. You have to direct your thoughts. You have to direct your feelings, okay? So we must first realize that we are all entitled to our very own likes and dislikes, okay? We don't like everything somebody says or does, and they're not going to like everything we say or do, okay? And guess what? It has to start being okay. It has to start being okay. We are not created with the same likes and dislikes, okay? We do not all have the same needs and wants. And it must start being okay with you that people are different, they think different, and they behave differently from you. So this right here is the whole session for some of you, because you simply cannot stand that people don't think like you, they don't act like you, they don't feel like you feel, right? And a lot of times that, just that alone, does somersaults on your nerves. It gets on your nerves that somebody won't do what you would do in a certain situation, or they're not thinking the way that you would think, right, in a certain situation. But that has to start being okay with you. When you can accept that this is a fact, it will start your journey in healing from being rejected in your past. And we all are rejected and will continue to be rejected as long as we are alive. You are not going to be everybody's standard. You're not going to satisfy everybody, right? You're not going to be everybody's taste, okay? So we tend to hold on to this feeling of rejection throughout our lives, but that never produces a positive outcome in the long run. You might be okay for right now, right, with this feeling of rejection, but in the long run, you will see the damage that this will do to your life. When someone has a difference of opinion, a different set of values, or maybe their priorities are not lined up the way yours are, you don't have to rationalize it against your own opinion and values, right? You just have to accept it, that that's their priorities, that's their opinion, that's their values, okay? When you don't accept people for who they are and how they think, you open the door for you and your thoughts to not be accepted either, okay? You can accept people for who they are without submitting to their influence. It's possible. Even if you feel like they need to change, it's their choice. It's not yours. So even if they need to make a positive change, okay, that's their choice to make that positive change, okay? So when you have the fear of rejection, it can cause you to become controlling and harsh, or you can go the opposite way and become a people pleaser and lose your identity. Okay. So if you're noticing some of these things in your characteristics, right, you might have the fear of rejection. Somebody not agreeing with you, it can easily create an injury or a wound to your soul, especially if you have not dealt with your fear of rejection. Okay. An injury is anything that causes harm or damage to you in some kind of way. If your feelings are hurt or your spirit is hurt, that's an injury, right? Whether it was intentional or not, some part of you was harmed. An injury can also be an injustice, which is lack of fairness, right? There's something done towards you that you saw, heard, or felt that was not fair or that you perceived not to be fair, okay? Injuries to your body, injuries to your mind or your spirit can cause real damage to your self-esteem, to your moral compass, to your faith and your belief system. It can also cause damage to your perceptions and your thinking processes, right? So when you have been crushed, when you have been broken and weakened and offended or abused by the words and actions of other people, you can develop self-sabotaging behaviors because you want to avoid feeling those injuries again, right? So you will literally self-sabotage. You put yourself in places that are not safe for you, mentally, physically, spiritually, or emotionally, because you want to avoid feeling those injuries again, right? So being rejected and letting the rejection lead you can produce more injuries and more injustices and self-sabotage, okay? So being rejected and letting that rejection lead you and direct your thoughts and direct your feelings and your emotions, it can produce more injuries, more injustices, and more self-sabotage. You can be rejected by someone without becoming it, okay? You can even feel rejected without becoming it, okay? And you become it when you start thinking like it, feeling like it, and acting like it. That's when you become the rejected, okay? So you have to change your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. And this goes for any emotion. You have to look at these emotions as personalities that you choose to intertwine with your own, right? Because these emotions don't have a physical body, so they have to use somebody, maybe yours, right, to fulfill those thoughts and feelings, right? Anger, fear, depression, rejection. They have to use your brain. They have to use your imagination. They have to use your mouth, your hands in order to fulfill its desires. Anger is nothing if you give it no power. Anger is nothing if you don't let it use your mouth, right? Anger is nothing if you don't let it use your mind, right? Fear is nothing if you don't let it use your faculties to fulfill its desires. Sometimes injuries and soul wounds that are not processed, they seem to attract more injuries, right? Which can lead you into a victim mindset or mentality, okay? If you are hypersensitive due to an injury, you have to process that so that your world isn't just seen and understood from an injured person's perspective or from a victim's perspective, right? You don't want to create a victim personality, right? Your personality is your way of thinking, feeling, and being. And you don't want to mix that with your trauma or with that injury that has happened to you, okay? Your mindset or your mentality is directed by your personality. But if your personality is influenced by your injury or your trauma, then your mindset will change as well. And that's the only way that you will see the world in any circumstance, right? So you may have been victimized, but don't let that become who you are, because it will come out through your behavior towards the world, okay? It will cripple you and keep you from growing to your full potential, right? So last session, we talked about fear. It's the same thing. You can let that intertwine with your personality until it directs your mindset. And that's how you live your life. So now this fear is managing everything you do, the way you think, and how you live your life. And you can never live up to your full potential with fear or with rejection or with resentment or anger, when you're letting all of these emotions lead your decisions, right? So resentment is another thing that grows from unprocessed rejection, okay? It shows up when there has been an injury to you where you feel wrong. So if you feel robbed of time or opportunities, you can become resentful, which also leads to your impatience, okay? Impatient people, they begin to make unhealthy decisions, right? Fear-based decisions, rejection-filled decisions that you will regret. Because why? Because it caused you to waste more time and more opportunities, okay? So this might be where you are. If you didn't know why the resentment is showing up, it could come from that unprocessed rejection. Okay, if you didn't know where that impatience was showing up, it could be coming from that unprocessed rejection. Okay, bitterness can be the same as resentment, except that I believe bitterness root is in disappointment and anger, right? I think bitterness comes with anger as well. It's not just resentment. These also come from feelings of rejection, okay? These things should not be left to fester and wonder throughout your thinking processes and penetrate your soul every day for months and even years at a time, right? Because it's shortening your life and it's causing you misery and torment, and it doesn't have to be there. Okay. So those injuries and those injustices that cause bitterness and resentment, they can be actual abuse or just the perception of some improper treatment that you feel, you were wrong in the way you were treated. Okay. If you have experienced any form of abuse, the rejection can actually be helpful to keep you from forming those soul ties, right? And soul ties are connections that you hold to someone or something that affects your will. So anything or any person that affects your will, that makes you do something different than what you would normally do, you have created a soul tie with that. Okay. So if you don't separate that rejection from who you are, then you will form those soul ties to who is abusing you or even the things that you are abusing, right? Because you don't create those ties with just people. Some people are tied to things, right? And like money, they're tied to money, and money is what moves them. You have to be careful about those things, that you're forming ties that are beneficial to you, that are good for you. And so the earliest memory that you have of being rejected is where you start seeing the patterns of that wound. Okay. How you perceive and acknowledge that determines how your life will be affected by it. Okay. And some rejection is easier to process than others. And it's different for everybody else. So how you perceive someone calling you stupid, that could be just, oh, okay. I know I'm not. I know who I am, right? But for someone else that maybe has had previous injuries with that word, it would affect them a lot differently, and it will be a lot harder for them to process that, right? And we have to be mindful of those things as human. We all have emotions, right? And we all have to process them, and we all have to give each other that grace to do that in a way that is healthy. Okay, so as an adult, we have to approve of rejection. We have to approve of these feelings and emotions. We have to give them consent in order to stay in our thoughts, right? We have to say, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I do feel that. Yeah, that's a good thought. You have to agree with them for them to stay in your mind, for them to stay in your feelings and in your soul, right? So some of us might need more than just one sheet of paper to record those unprocessed memories that rejection has tied to every other experience with other people that had nothing to do with why we were originally rejected in the first place, right? But anything that looks like it, that sounds like it, we attach it to it. And you have to separate it. You can't charge people for things someone else did. And yes, you should be cautious, but you should not cause someone else to have to pay the consequence for something that happened at the hands of someone else. Like I said, we have to validate our feelings of rejection and abandonment in order for it to be accepted. We have to see it as true in order for us to accept it. So we have to stop seeing it as this is who I am. This might be what I feel or what I have felt or what I have gone through, but this is not who I am. And if we stop consenting to those negative emotions in a way that blocks our access to a better life, we will receive and recognize when the positive emotions come, and we will be able to receive them more willingly, right? But when we're so full of the negativity, that leaves no room. You have to start making choices like, do I want to be happy, or have I gotten so comfortable with being miserable? because I feel safer, because I'm used to being rejected. I'm used to being abandoned, right? So you have to choose to want a positive emotion, to receive it. Okay? So the abandonment and rejection from your siblings, maybe even your parents, your old friends, bosses, all of these negative influences are living on, even though those people are no longer actively in your life, right? And abandonment and rejection is something that can be felt on a soul level, and anything that can be felt on a soul level can be transferred, even with women being pregnant. If they are rejecting their baby, or if they feel abandoned, that child will feel that, right? And they will grow up having that feeling, not knowing where it comes from. So sometimes those feelings of rejection is not even yours. It's something you were born with that came from, your mother or your father. And it's up to you as an adult to approve of those feelings and those emotions. Okay. So fear of abandonment, which is first cousins with rejection. I'm not talking about the first cousin you don't like. I'm talking about the first cousin that's your best friend, that you call your brother, that you call your sister. Abandonment and rejection are like this. Fear of abandonment is the fear of losing something that was given to you, and it's very specific to a person and a past experience. Okay? Fear of abandonment is the fear of losing something that was given to you, and it's very specific to a person or an event, right? Fear of that loss is abandonment. Okay. You can feel abandoned because of emotional neglect. Okay. Being inconsistently cared for. Okay. Or from non-support, you can feel abandoned. This can cause controlling behaviors or people pleasing. Like I said, same as with the fear of rejection. Okay. So abandonment is about the exits after that feeling of being rejected. Okay, so you have to release these thoughts and feelings connected to always having something that isn't in your control. Some things are not in your control. If it's here, it's meant to be here. If it's not, either it can't or it won't be. That's it. Okay, and that's the truth. You can express how you feel about it and accept it. And in this process, you don't want to abandon yourself, your true self, right? And start turning over and being influenced into being a different form of yourself, all right? Or showing up as your representative and not your true self. So some of you may be holding on to rejection. You might be holding that rejection in your souls, and it has been afflicting you. It can cause physical damage to your body, holding on to this rejection and the bitterness and abandonment, right? You can't deny or ignore the rejection, or you start becoming delusional. You accept it without letting it define you or change your worldview. When it begins to affect who you are and you change, you have given it the power and authority to manage your life. Okay. And a life managed by a rejected soul is a life that is full of turmoil, full of bitterness and resentment. Your life should be managed by a healthy perception, a mind that is fearfully and wonderfully made, right? And a soul that has been submitted to the master's plan. That's what your life should be managed by. So after today, you no longer work for rejection, right? You no longer work for abandonment and resentment and bitterness and impatience and fear, disappointment, anger. You no longer work for them. Turn in your resignation. Tell them you no longer will fill this position, right? You have outgrown them, okay? And you have decided to move on and receive the benefits of love, joy, peace, happiness, soundness of mind, right? And you have the option to have these feelings for eternity because we deserve it and because it is granted to us. So don't allow rejection, which is somebody's standard, right? It's their choice. Is if it's their satisfaction, right? And we're granted the right to like and dislike whatever we choose. So if the dislike so happens to be you, that's okay. There are still people that like you. Your thoughts and your ideas, everybody's not going to like them. Your feelings. Feelings are not things you're supposed to like or dislike, right? It's just information about what's going on in your thoughts. So if someone says, I feel something, they're giving you information about what's going on in their thoughts, what's going on in their hearts, right? You don't have to like it or dislike it. And I think we get confused when we think we have to like every feeling that somebody says about us. Some stuff about you is not likable, right? And you need to make it okay and understand that they're not rejecting you. They might be rejecting the way you think. They might be rejecting the way you behave. They're not rejecting you. And if they are rejecting you, that's their choice. Okay. And you decide what you're going to do with your thoughts about it, what you're going to do with your feelings about it. They can't make you do anything, right? But they can surely influence what you do if you allow it, right? So we don't want to use rejection as a scapegoat for us to behave unseemly, as a scapegoat for our thoughts to be thoughts of bitterness and hatred and anger, right? We can change the way we think. And if we change the way we think, we can change the way we feel, which changes the way we act. So if you have been dealing with rejection, look at that map, see where that wound started and what contributed to it, and start accepting, okay, I was rejected because of this, and then I was abandoned. Okay, was that good or bad for me? Okay, this was good for me. Okay, I can let that go. Move on to the next thing, right? And so from now on, when someone disagrees with you, when they disagree with your thought or your feeling or something you did, they have every right to. They have every right to disagree. They have every right to not like what you did, what you said, who you are. They have every right to. Now, what do you do with your thoughts after that? What are you going to decide to think from this moment on when you feel rejected? Don't attach it to the other rejection, because that's what we do, right? We attach it to when mama did it, daddy did it, cousin did it, kid did it. Don't do that. Nope. This is this scenario. This is this event. Decide what you're going to do with your thoughts and your feelings and how you're going to behave from this. Okay. And from now, that's how you handle it. That's how you process it in a healthy way. And that way it doesn't build up. And then the next person has to deal with all of the rejection. And if you're past 40, that's a lot, because you've been rejected in kindergarten by the little boy, the little girl that didn't want to play with you. And it's still affecting them to this day. Okay. So from now on, don't allow rejection to define you. Do something with your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors after you feel that feeling of being rejected. Don't tie it in together with other things. Okay. And other people, and make other people suffer the consequences, and they don't get the best version of you because of other people that have gone on with their lives that have rejected you or abandoned you. Okay. So that concludes our lesson for today. I hope you all got something from that. This is something we all deal with. We just need to learn how to process it correctly. And we can start today, right? And then kind of go back and see where those wounds are and deal with each one of them separately. Some of them, it just looked like the same thing somebody else did, but you really wasn't rejected. So you can throw that away. You can cancel those out. But those ones that, really hit or really cause an injury or harm to your soul or your spirit, you want to deal with that and you want to process it so that we all can get the best version of you. We can all get the version of you that the master created, right? Not what our traumas created, not what our hatred created and our bitterness created, right? We want to give each other the best version of ourselves. We want all of our lights to shine, right? And that is what pushes for the kingdom of God, okay? Not us being rejected and hateful and bitter, okay? That's not a light, okay? That humility, that false humility that's rooted in pride, I've been checked on that, because I've told God what I couldn't do, even after he told me what I was gonna do. And so And it comes in like timidity, right? It comes in like, oh, you're being shy, which may be the case. But the moment you say you can't do something that God told you you will do, you're saying that no, you don't know. I know. I know what I can do more than what you know what I can do, right? And that's pride. You're lifting yourself and your opinions of yourself, even though they're low opinions, you're lifting that up above God's opinion of you, right? And we have to be committed to doing his plan, not ours. So it really doesn't matter what we feel, right? The truth is what he said, okay? So even when we don't feel loved by God, right? What he said was he won't leave us nor forsake us, and he loves us. Okay. So even when we don't feel it, that doesn't make it not true. And that's how our feelings and our emotions can get us in trouble a lot of the times. And even becoming those feelings. And we are becoming these things when we start thinking like it, acting like it, and feeling like it. That's when we become it. So we have to be careful about that. And a lot of that is rooted in fear. It starts as a fear of whatever it is. Well, thank you all for joining me. I hope that you have begun, even as we've been speaking, processing that rejection, not tying it all together. We've tied it to other things and other events and just lumped it up in a whole big ball and haven't processed any of it, right? And we're feeling it in our stomach. We're feeling it in our necks, in our backs, right? Let some of that go so you can move a little bit more. Release that tension in your muscles, right? You've been going to the doctor. You don't know why your muscles so tense up. Stop that rejection. Let it go. Because it does affect our physical body. It does affect our physical body. And a lot of times we don't understand when our spirit is affected, how it affects our body. And you know it. You know when it's a spiritual thing, when you go to the doctor and they can't find the reason. They don't have the tools to measure your spirit. They only have the tools to measure physical things and physical abnormalities, right? And so that's one of the ways that you can tell that, hey, this is a spirit thing. This is something affecting my spirit, and I need to find out and get to the root of it to find out what it is. So just a little tidbit for everybody. Well, you all have a blessed weekend. I will see you next Friday at 3 o'clock. This video should be up by the end of the day. Make sure you share it. If you know anybody that doesn't manage rejection well, that needs to learn how, that's been using rejection as an excuse to not move forward in their life, maybe using rejection as a cop out for their outbursts and bad decisions, send them to YouTube, Replenish 3125. And you all have a blessed rest of the day. Love y'all.